Je donne maintenant la parole.
I have the honor to welcome I give the floor to the head of delegation of President of the Bolivarian Republic.
Thank you, President. It is my honor to introduce the statement by the President of Venezuela, Mr. Maduro Moros, before the United Nations General Assembly. Thank you very much. As we begin this new session of the General Assembly, I wish to greet all member states of the United Nations. I wish to greet the peoples and governments of the 194 countries duly present at this General Assembly. In particular, I wish to greet Mr. Abdullah Shahid, who has assumed the presidency of this General Assembly. I wish him the best of success. The United Nations General Assembly convenes us all every September. Heads of government, heads of state, presidents, prime ministers, and the highest authorities to allow us to discuss our views and debate the ideas of a world that must continue to progress towards building a multipolar, pluricentric world without imperialist hegemony. This is the second time we have met in the General Assembly since the COVID-19 pandemic struck. We are addressing the General Assembly virtually from our respective countries and from official government offices. I would like to greet all ambassadors and authorities who, in the midst of the pandemic, have shared their views, whether in person in New York or from their own countries, their positions about how we can build a new world of peace for humanity this century, a new world based on cooperation and dialogue, respecting the ideological, cultural, political, and religious diversity of people throughout the world. This new world, this new human community, must be free of hegemonic empires. It must be liberated from any hegemons or any empire's attempts at economic, financial, military, or political domination, liberated from those who over centuries plundered, dominated, exploited, and oppressed people throughout the world with their old rapacious colonialism. They are those who are today attempting to impose new forms of colonialism on our people, new forms of domination, looting, oppression, and exploitation of people throughout the world. That is why, in this General Assembly, overshadowed by the pandemic, From the very heart of our beloved fatherland, Venezuela is calling for a new world free from colonialism, a new world without imperialism, a new world without any dominant hegemon, a new world of cooperation, belonging to a human community with a shared destiny. It is a multipolar, pluricentric world for which we yearn, and for which we are issuing a rallying cry with all people of the world, with the peoples of the South, especially in the non-aligned movement doctrine, the South-South doctrine, our vision, our commitment and certainty. Many countries have strongly supported Venezuela as it has grappled with the circumstances of the past few years. Dozens of countries represented here at the United Nations have provided support, cooperation and solidarity to our people. They have listened to the truth from the voices of Venezuelans themselves. On many previous occasions at this General Assembly, and in other parts of the United Nations system, Venezuela has frequently spoken out against the ferocious onslaught, the merciless campaign waged against our country by the elites that have governed the United States, with the complicity of the elites at the helm of organizations in Europe and elsewhere. They have sought to manipulate international organizations and international law in an attempt to justify their merciless campaign and criminal aggressions against the noble, peaceful and democratic people of Venezuela. We have spoken out about this situation on many prior occasions and in many different organizations, and we are doing so again here today before the United Nations General Assembly in New York. At this session of the General Assembly in September 2021, Venezuela again denounces a savage campaign, a permanent systematic aggression waged through economic, financial, cruel oil sanctions, a persecution of the right to economic freedom, violating the economic rights and guarantees to which all people are entitled. This is a fierce assault on the right to buy what our country needs and on the right to sell what our country produces, particularly Venezuela's immense oil and mining wealth, which it has developed for decades. Bank accounts are being targeted. Our gold, held in the legal international reserves at the Venezuelan Central Bank in London, has been seized. And billions of dollars held in bank accounts in the United States, Europe, and beyond have been frozen. Venezuelan oil and mining companies are prevented from selling their products and opening bank accounts to pay and receive money and to trade freely, as is provided for under international law. This is financial, monetary, economic persecution, which is systematic, cruel, and criminal, and Venezuela is raising its voice here to denounce it before the people of the world. For years, we have faced threats. For years, we have faced aggressions. Nevertheless, I can say to you today, from the heart of Caracas, where the liberators of America were born, that the Venezuelan people, with their great capacity for resilience and resistance, the Venezuelan people have risen. This year, 2021, is a particularly special year for Venezuela, as we are marking 200 years since the victory of the Battle of Carabobo, which was decisive in our country's independence. This year, we have progressed from a cruel, painful time of resistance to one of recovery and prolonged growth in the domains of science, innovation, and technology, with the spiritual resilience of a hard-working people who refuse to give in. A free, rebellious people who have flourished in spite of the challenges of the past few years. We have taken the path of recovery and holistic growth for our nation. We have chosen to unleash our productive strengths. Despite the hellish blockade, despite the criminal persecution and cruel torture of our nation's economic and social life, we can thus say to the people of the world, with bravery, with decisiveness, with intelligence and wisdom, yes, we can. We can stand up to these imperialist aggressions and prosper. That is why we once again call for, indeed demand, that all the criminal sanctions imposed on the Venezuelan economy and society by the United States and the European Union be lifted. Our demand is morally just, and we are making it on behalf of 30 million Venezuelan men and women. We are grateful for the support of many UN member states in helping us advance towards achieving this key goal of our country and our region. I would like to take this opportunity to underscore our support for and solidarity with the Republic of Cuba, the people of Cuba, whose demand that all elements of the economic and trade embargo be lifted have been supported by a majority vote at the UN on 27 occasions. Venezuela also speaks out in favor of justice and humanity for Cuba, a republic and a heroic people. Our country has successfully overcome all of these circumstances. That is why we would like to convey to you all the United Nations Secretariat, the presidency of this Annual General Assembly, and all ambassadors and representatives of governments, we would like to convey to you all the official results of the report of the UN Special Rapporteur on Sanctions, who visited Venezuela earlier this year for a period of 7 days. She drafted a very objective and reasonable report on the subject of these criminal sanctions and recommended that they be immediately lifted and that international law and international humanitarian law be respected, as well as Venezuela's right to freedom, to economic, trade and financial guarantees, and the full enjoyment of the rights to which any sovereign country belonging to the United Nations is entitled. This year, 2021, has also seen Venezuela making remarkable progress in two crucial domains: in the inclusive dialogue for peace in our country, and in the holding of the 29th elections in the last 20 years. Elections that are to be held on the 21st of November this year, to elect all regional, municipal and local authorities through the popular vote, as our country's Bolivarian constitution provides for. This year we have begun talks with the business, social, trade and political sectors. We have opted for dialogue, especially through national round-table talks on peace and sovereignty held in Mexico City, with the most recent round held on the 13th of August. These are very important talks. They aim to bring even the most extreme elements of the opposition back to the negotiating table and to the electoral process. Those radical sectors of the opposition who tried a coup d'etat in Venezuela, who facilitated a foreign invasion into our land, and who even planned to assassinate me. I can announce to the United Nations that we have achieved this goal. We have been able to bring these groups back to politics, to the Constitution, and to the electoral process. And now, with the support of the government of President López Obrador in Mexico, and with the invaluable diplomatic support provided by the Kingdom of Norway, with the direct presence of the government of the Russian Federation, and the assistance of the Netherlands, we are implementing a comprehensive agenda, enabling us to make headway in our social and economic recovery, in our whole country's recovery through dialogue. I would like to thank the Secretary-General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, for his support to the talks in Mexico, and I would like to request the entire United Nations to get behind these talks in Mexico so that we can reach new agreements, including a comprehensive agreement to strengthen peace, sovereignty, prosperity and comprehensive recovery in Venezuela. This is what I'm requesting, and I'm very grateful for your support. Venezuela will follow this same approach to prioritize dialogue in international fora as well. When it comes to the issue of climate change, as we have said frequently in the relevant bodies, we urgently require a practical and verifiable way to curb greenhouse gas emissions, to combat the warming of the seas. and to address all natural disasters resulting from climate change. We need verifiable and effective measures to prevent the environmental balance of the Earth from being knocked out of kilter. Recent years have shown us the dangers. We even saw widespread flooding here in New York, the host city of the United Nations. And we have also seen fires and floods in India, China, Spain, and Venezuela. We have seen major droughts in the south of South America. The Paraná River dried up completely, which has never been seen before. We must demand that the most powerful governments in the world undertake effective measures to reduce global warming, to curb greenhouse gas emissions, and to give people hope in the face of a truly worrying and tragic situation for many on this earth. Undoubtedly, it is the United Nations system. It is the path of multilateralism and international law that must be strengthened, as well as the sovereignty that people bravely exercise pursuant to international law. We need to build a new world that is already emerging in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and the United States of America, a new world born again, to put an end to the old hegemonies, to put an end to some people's attempt to become the world's policemen and judges. This is the age of freedom, sovereignty, and independence. A new world needs a new United Nations organization, a new UN, so that we can all act in solidarity, and so that we can all take the necessary rightful steps towards a new community, the new world. This new world is what Venezuela is clamoring for. Thank you very much, representatives of governments and authorities of the United Nations. Thank you very much. On behalf of the General Assembly, I would like to thank the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the statement just delivered.